Liam always loved early mornings, the kind when sunlight barely kissed the windows and the world outside was quiet and slow, giving him a rare chance to breathe and think without interruption. But today something felt different. A subtle tension he couldn't place as he pushed open the kitchen door, expecting the familiar emptiness, the smell of brewed coffee filling the space, and yet he stopped dead in his tracks, because there she was, Emma, his wife's younger sister, standing near the counter, arranging fruits with a soft hum that seemed to wrap around the room and settle in his chest, a sound so familiar yet startling in its unexpectedness, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Two sets of eyes meeting in a silence that spoke louder than words, Liam feeling an unusual mix of surprise, curiosity, and something deeper he couldn't name, a pull he hadn't anticipated, while Emma's smile held a hint of mischief and warmth, the kind of expression that could make anyone's heart skip, and though Liam tried to act casual, pretending he hadn't noticed her, he felt his pulse quicken as their hands brushed almost by accident when he reached for the coffee mug, an electric shock running through him that neither of them could ignore, and as he poured the coffee, his mind wandered to memories of past gatherings, family dinners, and small moments shared with Emma that he had always dismissed as ordinary, now seeming charged with new meaning, every laugh, every glance replaying in his head as if the morning itself had unlocked a secret world of emotions, while Emma leaned on the counter, her posture relaxed but her gaze intense, studying him with an unreadable expression that made him wonder what she was thinking. And in that brief silence, the air thickened, every sound magnified, the clink of the coffee spoon against the mug, the faint rustle of leaves outside, even their breathing seemed louder, more significant, as if the house itself had grown smaller around them, forcing intimacy that neither had asked for, yet both felt, the space between them shrinking with every passing second, making it hard to think clearly or act naturally. Liam's thoughts swirling with confusion and fascination, a mixture of admiration and guilt, because he knew these feelings were complicated, tangled with family loyalty and love for his wife, yet here they were, undeniable and present, pressing against the boundaries he had always respected, and Emma, catching his hesitation, tilted her head slightly, a silent question in her eyes. What are we doing here, really? Though the words were never spoken, and Liam could only manage a nervous laugh, a little too loud, hoping to break the tension but only succeeding in making the moment feel even more electric, the kind of moment that could linger in memory forever, a collision of familiarity and attraction that neither had anticipated. And yet they didn't move away, each caught in the gravity of the other's presence, a silent acknowledgement that something had shifted, even if only subtly, in the dynamics that had once seemed so simple, while outside, the world continued its slow awakening, oblivious to the storm of emotions brewing inside the kitchen, and Liam found himself noticing small details, Emma's hair falling just so over her shoulder, the soft curve of her smile, the warmth in her voice when she spoke to herself while arranging the fruits, details he had never paid attention to before, and every tiny observation only intensified the strange, quiet longing building between them, a longing that was forbidden yet impossible to ignore, like a melody that played softly in the background, impossible to shut out, filling every corner of his mind as he tried to focus on something, anything else, but failing miserably, and Emma, sensing his distraction, smirked faintly, her eyes twinkling with a knowing sparkle, as if she understood exactly what was happening in his mind, yet remained calm, poised, and in control, which only made Liam's thoughts spiral faster, a mix of desire, confusion, and fear, all blending into a cocktail of emotions he had never expected to feel in a simple morning in the kitchen. And as he finally settled into a chair at the counter, trying to sip his coffee and regain composure, he realized he couldn't take his eyes off her, noticing the way the light hit her face, how her expression softened when she smiled, how effortless she seemed, while he, in contrast, felt unsteady, aware of every heartbeat, every twitch of muscle, every flicker of expression, and for a fleeting moment, he wondered if she felt the same pull, the same tension, the same unspoken acknowledgement of the spark that had ignited between them, and he remembered that mornings like these were rare, quiet, uninterrupted, but now charged with a kind of emotional electricity he had never experienced, making every small motion monumental, every word heavy with meaning. And though neither spoke of it outright, there was a dance happening between them, a subtle choreography of glances, movements, and gestures that conveyed a language all their own, one that bypassed reason and tapped directly into the heart, while Liam's mind raced with questions, doubts, and moral boundaries. Trying to reconcile the warmth he felt with the loyalty he owed, every thought colliding with the next, making him dizzy and enthralled at the same time, yet he couldn't bring himself to leave, as if the room itself held him captive in this moment, demanding he face emotions he had buried, ignored, or simply not recognized until now. And Emma, with her quiet confidence and gentle charm, seemed to hold the same awareness, her presence both comforting and dangerous, a paradox that made the air between them shimmer with possibility and tension. And as Liam finally set down his mug, their hands accidentally brushing again, he felt that same jolt, a reminder that some connections were magnetic, undeniable, and impossible to dismiss. And in that instant, everything else, the world outside, the ticking of the clock, the responsibilities waiting for him, vanished, leaving only the two of them suspended in a delicate, thrilling, and emotionally charged bubble, a moment that promised something new, something unspoken, something that would linger in memory, haunting and sweet. And Liam knew, without needing to admit it aloud, that this morning, ordinary as it might seem to anyone else, would change the way he looked at Emma forever, a memory etched with longing, awareness, and the bittersweet ache of emotions too complex to name, yet impossible to deny. While outside the kitchen window, sunlight finally broke through, casting soft shadows across the room, illuminating them both, and Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart, knowing that the day ahead would be filled with decisions, responsibilities, and conversations that might alter everything, yet unable to ignore the magnetic pull that had been awakened in a simple, quiet, early morning encounter, leaving him both terrified and exhilarated, caught between what was right and what felt impossible to resist, the tension between desire and loyalty painting the air with a delicate, unspoken promise that neither of them could escape. And for the first time in a long while, Liam felt the raw, unfiltered weight of human emotion, complicated, messy, beautiful, and painfully real, as he realized that mornings like this didn't come often, but when they did, they could change everything in ways one could never predict. The kitchen had settled into a quiet rhythm after that brief, electric moment, but the air between Liam and Emma was far from calm, charged with unspoken words, lingering glances, and a tension that neither of them knew how to name. And as Liam leaned against the counter, trying to sip his now lukewarm coffee, he noticed the way Emma's fingers traced absent-minded patterns on the fruit bowl, a subtle movement that somehow drew his attention more than anything else. And he found himself wondering about the thoughts behind her eyes, the feelings she carried that she hadn't shared with anyone, and yet there was a softness in her expression, a quiet vulnerability that invited conversation, that begged for connection. And without realizing it, Liam began speaking, not about trivial things, not about the weather or the mundane chores of the day, but about feelings, about life, about the kind of invisible weight one carried quietly while everyone else assumed everything was fine. And Emma, surprisingly, didn't recoil or change the subject. She leaned closer, her body angled in a way that seemed natural yet intimate, listening intently, nodding in understanding, occasionally offering a word or two that made Liam feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. And he realized that their conversation had crossed a line from casual to personal, from ordinary to something raw and revealing, a space where emotions were safe to surface, where they could be honest without judgment. And in that honesty, Liam noticed a strange sense of relief, a release of tension he hadn't even known he carried, while Emma's own voice softened, her tone carrying warmth. And as she spoke about her own uncertainties, fears, and small dreams, Liam felt a swell of empathy and admiration, a recognition of the depth in her that had always been there, hidden beneath playful smiles and family familiarity, but now exposed in a way that demanded attention. And he found himself leaning in, drawn not only by curiosity but by a magnetic pull he didn't fully understand, aware all the while of the lines they were skirting, of the boundaries they were dancing around, yet unable to stop the flow of words and emotions, because sometimes connection couldn't be denied. And here it was, tangible, almost suffocating in its intensity, filling every corner of the kitchen with an invisible, almost electric energy, making every movement, every glance, every pause carry meaning far beyond what the simple gestures suggested. And Liam noticed how Emma's laughter, light and soft, could lift the weight in his chest, how her expressions shifted subtly when she spoke of something she cared about, how her eyes sparkled when she mentioned a dream she had quietly nurtured, and he felt a stirring within himself, a combination of admiration, longing, and the bittersweet ache of forbidden attraction, a knot of emotions he struggled to untangle, and yet he continued talking, drawn into this unexpected, vulnerable space, feeling a strange and unfamiliar comfort in sharing pieces of himself with someone who wasn't his wife, yet somehow still felt safe, and Emma, in turn, responded with a similar openness, her voice gentle, warm, filled with an honesty that made Liam's pulse quicken. The kind of honesty that could only exist when two people truly saw each other beyond roles, expectations, and superficial connections, and as their words flowed, they began to discover shared experiences, common dreams, and mirrored doubts, a sense of recognition that often forms the foundation of deep, unspoken bonds, and Liam realized that this wasn't just a passing conversation, it was a turning point, a rare moment where the heart spoke freely and the mind struggled to catch up. And in the midst of this emotional storm, he felt a warmth, a tension, a pull, a yearning that complicated every thought, every decision, every memory of his life with Sarah, yet there was no anger, no resentment, only a raw, aching curiosity and fascination, the kind that makes people stop in their tracks and reconsider what they thought they knew about love, connection, and intimacy. And as Emma shared a story from her own past, a quiet heartbreak that had shaped her in ways she rarely revealed, Liam's heart went out to her. And he reached out instinctively, a comforting gesture, his hand hovering near hers for a moment longer than necessary, their fingers almost touching, a silent acknowledgement of understanding and shared vulnerability. And for a heartbeat, time seemed to pause, the kitchen shrinking around them, the world outside forgotten, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a bubble of emotion, of connection, of unspoken possibility. And though Liam knew the moment was fleeting, fragile, and perhaps dangerous, he couldn't bring himself to withdraw, unable to resist the pull of honesty, empathy, and subtle attraction that had formed between them, while Emma, sensing his hesitation and the storm of conflicting emotions within him, offered a small, reassuring smile, her eyes soft yet searching, inviting conversation, yet never overstepping, balancing intimacy with propriety in a way that made Liam's chest ache with the complexity of what he was feeling. And they continued, words weaving a tapestry of shared vulnerabilities, reflections, and quiet laughter, each sentence carrying weight, each pause filled with meaning, a dance of emotion that was thrilling, terrifying, and strangely comforting. And Liam realized that these rare moments of deep, unguarded connection could be transformative, that even in the briefest exchanges, hearts could be stirred, perspectives shifted, and unspoken desires illuminated. And as the morning sunlight filtered through the window, casting warm shadows across the counter, Liam felt a pang of awareness that their time together was limited, that the fragile intimacy they had stumbled into might be interrupted at any moment, yet he didn't want it to end, craving just a little more, another sentence, another laugh, another glance that said more than words ever could. While Emma, too, lingered, drawn into the quiet gravity of the moment, aware of the complexities, yet unwilling to break the spell too soon, sensing that some connections, once formed, could never fully fade. And as Liam leaned back slightly, letting his mind absorb the intensity of the conversation, he noticed a subtle change in himself, a mixture of admiration, longing, curiosity, and restraint, a cocktail of emotions that made him realize how deeply unexpected this encounter had become. And in that realization, he found both exhilaration and fear, for the connection was undeniable, raw, and emotionally charged, yet fraught with moral boundaries, the kind that made hearts ache and minds race simultaneously. And as he glanced at Emma one more time, he felt an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them, a quiet recognition that this morning, ordinary as it seemed, had shifted something fundamental, a fragile understanding that something had started, something neither of them could fully name or control, a gentle but persistent pull that would linger in thoughts, dreams, and quiet moments for days to come, shaping the way Liam felt about Emma, about Sarah, about love, and about the delicate balance between desire and loyalty. And as the minutes ticked by, their conversation gradually turned toward lighter subjects, though the intensity of what had passed lingered like a soft, unbroken chord, a memory etched into the fabric of their minds, making Liam acutely aware of the emotional depth and vulnerability that had been shared, a depth that left him both captivated and unsettled, filled with longing, respect, and a quiet, aching wonder about the nature of human connection. And as Emma finally straightened, Preparing to move on with her day, Liam felt a bittersweet mix of relief, anticipation, and silent hope, knowing that their morning together had opened a door, one that could never truly be closed, leaving both of them to navigate the delicate line between familial duty, personal emotion, and the unspoken magnetism that had sparked unexpectedly in the quiet of an ordinary kitchen, a spark that would shape their thoughts, their glances, and their hearts long after the coffee had cooled and the sunlight had moved across the floor, a subtle, profound reminder that some moments, no matter how fleeting, leave traces that cannot be ignored, and in that awareness, Liam carried both caution and curiosity, respect and fascination, longing and restraint, all wrapped into a single, fast-beating heartbeat that made him feel alive, aware, and irrevocably changed by the morning's unexpected, emotional storm. The quiet tension that had built in the kitchen over the last morning now seemed to thrum louder in Liam's chest, each beat a reminder of the fragile, unspoken connection he shared with Emma, a connection that had grown more intense and complicated with every passing second. And just as he was beginning to convince himself that their conversation could remain private, the soft sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, a rhythm that immediately sent a jolt of panic through both of them, and Liam's heart skipped as he realized it was Sarah, his wife, returning earlier than expected, her familiar voice humming faintly as she approached the kitchen, completely unaware of the delicate, charged scene unfolding behind the counter, and in that moment, Liam felt a mixture of relief and terror, relief that someone ordinary was nearby, grounding him, and terror because he knew that the intimate energy between him and Emma could be misunderstood, could explode into a situation he wasn't ready to face. While Emma's eyes widened ever so slightly, a flash of worry crossing her otherwise calm face, and Liam instinctively tried to straighten his posture, clear the tension from his expression, and act casual, though every fiber of his being was screaming otherwise, telling him that nothing could be casual now, that the morning had altered everything, shifted the boundaries he had relied on for years, and for a fleeting second, Liam considered running, leaving the kitchen, stepping away from Emma, but some part of him stayed rooted, captivated by the intensity in her eyes, the quiet, intimate connection that had blossomed between them, and Emma, sensing the storm of conflicting emotions within him, offered a small, reassuring smile, a gesture meant to calm him, yet one that only seemed to intensify the pull between them, the invisible magnetic thread that had been quietly tightening since the moment they had met in the kitchen, and as Sarah's footsteps drew closer, Liam could feel the air crackle, the room shrinking around them, making each breath heavier, each movement more deliberate, and he struggled to find words that could bridge the normalcy of their presence with the extraordinary tension that had suddenly entered their lives, while Emma's hand lingered near his for just a heartbeat longer, a silent acknowledgement of the shared emotions that could not be erased, a fleeting, forbidden intimacy that made every nerve in his body hum with awareness. And as the front door opened and Sarah's familiar presence filled the kitchen, Liam's heart raced, caught between loyalty, desire, and the overwhelming weight of the moment, and Emma quickly stepped back, regaining composure, smoothing her expression into a calm, polite demeanor, while Liam felt a sharp tug of guilt, realizing how dangerously close they had come to crossing lines that could never be uncrossed, and yet he could not deny the emotional pull, the intensity that lingered even as they both struggled to act normal, exchanging polite greetings with Sarah, their voices careful, controlled, yet every glance and subtle gesture laden with the memory of the charged moment they had shared, the electricity that had built between them now hidden under layers of politeness and fleeting smiles, a secret that neither could fully ignore. And as Sarah busied herself with her morning routine, unpacking groceries and chatting about mundane tasks, Liam felt his mind constantly drift back to Emma, to the warmth of her presence, the softness in her eyes, the quiet understanding that had passed between them, and he realized with a pang that some connections were unavoidable, impossible to dismiss, shaping thoughts and emotions even in the midst of ordinary life, while Emma moved about the kitchen with grace and composure, pretending everything was normal, yet Liam could sense the subtle awareness in her posture, the slight tilt of her head, the brief pauses where her eyes met his, sending messages that were delicate, silent, yet profoundly meaningful, and in those moments, Liam felt a whirlwind of emotions, longing, guilt, fascination, and admiration, mixing together in a way that made him both exhilarated and terrified, aware that the day, the week, perhaps even the months ahead, would be colored by this fragile, dangerous bond, and yet despite the risk, neither of them could fully disengage, their hearts stubbornly tethered by invisible threads, a connection that had been sparked in a quiet, unsuspecting morning, now refusing to fade quietly into the background of normal life. And as Liam handed Sarah a cup of coffee, their hands brushed ever so slightly, a touch loaded with the memory of the morning, and he felt a jolt run through him, a reminder that the emotional storm was not over, that it could never truly be ignored, while Emma, pretending to adjust the placement of a fruit bowl, allowed her eyes to meet his briefly, a subtle flicker of recognition passing between them, an acknowledgement of what had occurred and what lingered, a delicate, dangerous dance of glances and gestures, charged with intensity yet restrained by awareness of the consequences, and Liam felt himself leaning subtly into her presence, his mind racing with questions, fantasies, and fears, the moral and emotional boundaries he had relied upon now seeming tenuous, fragile, and yet necessary, a tension that heightened every interaction, every smile, every word exchanged, while Sarah continued to move about the kitchen, blissfully unaware of the silent drama unfolding just a few feet away. And Liam realized how delicate and rare these moments of emotional intensity were, how they could shift perspectives, awaken dormant feelings, and make ordinary life feel suddenly charged with unspoken possibility. And Emma, sensing the inner turbulence within him, offered a quiet, fleeting look, a mixture of empathy, understanding, and a subtle acknowledgement of the attraction and emotional connection they shared, a look that both comforted and unsettled him, making his chest tighten with conflicting emotions. And as Sarah left the kitchen to check something in the living room, Liam and Emma found themselves alone for a moment again, hearts still racing, breaths shallow, each aware of the precarious balance they were maintaining, the line between connection and temptation, between desire and duty, and Liam's thoughts swirled, a chaotic mixture of longing, guilt, and wonder, while Emma's expression softened, her presence calming yet stirring emotions he hadn't expected to feel. And in that shared silence, words were unnecessary, the tension and understanding passing between them in quiet, subtle waves, making every movement and glance significant, heavy with meaning, while Liam realized that moments like these, fleeting, fragile, dangerous, yet profoundly emotional, were rare and unforgettable. And as he finally broke the silence with a carefully measured comment about the morning's errands, he felt the weight of their shared experience linger in the air, an invisible thread connecting their hearts, a secret bond that would remain even as they resumed the ordinary flow of family life, shaping thoughts, glances, and unspoken emotions in subtle, permanent ways. And as Emma moved to wash a dish, Liam caught himself watching the way her hair fell across her shoulder, the gentle curve of her profile, the way she moved with quiet grace, and he felt an ache, a longing that was tender, restrained, yet impossible to ignore, while Emma, noticing him glance in her direction, allowed a small, knowing smile to form, delicate and understated, a quiet acknowledgement of what had transpired and the unspoken emotions that lingered. And Liam, feeling the rush of both excitement and fear, realized that he had stepped into a space where emotions were raw, unguarded, and profound, where connection and longing intertwined in a delicate dance that demanded respect and awareness. And yet the magnetic pull remained, subtle but unrelenting, reminding him of the emotional intensity of their earlier conversation, the intimacy of their shared vulnerability, and the dangerous allure of something both thrilling and forbidden. While the morning light filtered softly through the window, illuminating the room, the scene, and the delicate balance of feelings suspended between them, making Liam aware of the fragility, beauty, and complexity of human emotion, the way hearts can reach out silently, how desire and restraint can coexist, and how a single moment, a brief conversation, a glance, or a touch, can ripple through time, leaving marks that shape perception, decision, and feeling. And in that awareness, Liam felt both exhilaration and restraint, longing and responsibility, admiration and guilt, all mixing into a vivid, intense awareness of the emotional storm, the quiet magnetism that had ignited, and the delicate, unspoken promise that some bonds, once formed, could never truly be undone, lingering in memory, thought, and fleeting glances, coloring life in ways subtle yet profound. And as Emma finally finished her task and turned to face him fully, Liam felt a surge of emotion, gratitude for the connection, awe at the intensity, fear of its consequences, and wonder at the power of quiet, unspoken intimacy. knowing that today had changed everything, reshaping his heart, his understanding of emotion, and the fragile, beautiful complexity of human connection forever. Days passed after that morning in the kitchen, and though life had returned to its usual rhythm, Liam could not shake the memory of Emma, the subtle tension, the quiet intensity of their conversation, and the way her presence lingered in his mind, a soft ache that he felt with every glance at her, every word exchanged at family gatherings, every laugh that reminded him of the shared warmth and vulnerability they had discovered together. And even though they now interacted with polite normalcy, each greeting measured, each conversation carefully light, there was an unspoken undercurrent, a silent acknowledgement of what had been, what could have been, and what would remain, a bond woven from fleeting moments of emotional intimacy, understanding, and delicate longing, a bond that neither dared name aloud but which neither could ignore. And Liam often found himself thinking about the morning, replaying it with vivid clarity, the soft hum of her voice, the brief touch of their hands, the way her eyes had held his with both empathy and something more, something that made his chest tighten with conflicting emotions, desire tempered by loyalty, fascination restrained by conscience. And as he went about his days, he realized how much that one encounter had reshaped his perception of connection, of love, and of subtle intimacy, making him notice small gestures, fleeting smiles, and unspoken messages in ways he hadn't before, while Emma herself carried the same quiet awareness, her movements and expressions imbued with gentle restraint, a balance between familial propriety and the lingering echo of emotional closeness. And in those fleeting interactions, shared laughter, a glance that lingered too long, a word chosen carefully, both Liam and Emma felt the pull of connection, a magnetic force that reminded them of the depth of understanding they had discovered in one another, a connection built on empathy, shared vulnerabilities, and quiet recognition. And though life demanded normalcy, responsibility, and attention to family, their hearts could not entirely forget the emotional imprint of that morning, marking them with subtle intensity, a soft but persistent presence in their thoughts, dreams, and private moments, making ordinary interactions feel layered, significant, and tinged with meaning. And Liam often caught himself reflecting on the lessons embedded in that morning, the importance of listening, of noticing, of recognizing human emotion, of honoring feelings without allowing them to cross boundaries that could hurt those we love. And he realized that connection need not always be physical or overt to be powerful. It could reside in shared understanding, quiet acknowledgement, and the respect for emotions that cannot be acted on but must be honored in silence. And Emma, in turn, discovered the same truth, learning to navigate the balance between her heart and the realities of life, embracing the beauty of unspoken bonds, the subtle thrill of emotional intimacy, and the bittersweet ache of longing that could exist without crossing lines, teaching her that desire and respect could coexist in a delicate, meaningful way. And as weeks turned into months, Liam and Emma's relationship settled into a rhythm of understated closeness, where each interaction, glance, and conversation carried layers of emotional depth, a richness that went beyond casual familiarity, that hinted at the tender, complex humanity within each of them. And they both grew more aware of themselves, their feelings, and their capacity for empathy, love, and restraint, understanding that some connections, once formed, shape the soul in ways obvious and subtle, permanent, yet intangible. And this awareness made Liam more attentive in his marriage, more grateful for Sarah, more conscious of the nuances of human emotion, while Emma cultivated the same self-awareness, balancing affection, longing, and loyalty with clarity and grace. And in those quiet moments, shared smiles across the room, brief exchanges of words, or simple acts of kindness, they found a way to honor the bond they had discovered without allowing it to disrupt their lives, a delicate dance of emotion, restraint, and understanding, the kind of connection that is rare, powerful, and transformative, leaving a lasting impression on the heart, mind, and soul. And Liam often reflected on the lessons embedded in their restrained intimacy, the beauty of noticing, the power of listening, the quiet thrill of unspoken acknowledgement, the way hearts can resonate silently with one another without action, and how human emotion can be honored without harm, teaching him patience, empathy, and the value of subtlety in relationships. While Emma mirrored these reflections, discovering that longing, admiration, and deep emotional resonance can exist without transgression, creating a sense of fulfillment, even in restraint, that is rare and profound. And together, though separated by propriety, loyalty, and circumstance, they carried the memory of that kitchen morning as a gentle reminder of human complexity, the way connection can be both thrilling and dangerous, tender and restrained, intoxicating and disciplined, and the way emotional bonds, once awakened, leave an indelible mark that quietly informs thoughts, choices, and feelings, shaping lives in ways unseen but deeply felt. And Liam, standing quietly one evening at the kitchen counter, noticed Emma laughing softly at something mundane, and he felt a pang of longing, tempered by gratitude for the respect they both maintained, aware of the delicate, beautiful tension that remained, an invisible thread connecting them across time, space, and circumstance, a thread that reminded him that human hearts are capable of profound connection, even in silence, even in restraint, and that these connections, subtle as they may be, are just as meaningful, just as transformative, as any overt gesture of love. While Emma, catching his glance, offered a small, fleeting smile, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they shared, a bond that was emotionally charged yet perfectly contained, tender yet controlled, passionate yet restrained. And in that moment, Liam felt a rush of emotion, admiration, gratitude, and a bittersweet ache, recognizing that the true depth of human connection is often measured not in physical closeness but in understanding, empathy, and the courage to honor feelings while maintaining integrity. And he realized that mornings like the one they shared, though fleeting, can leave lasting impressions, quietly shaping who we are, how we relate, and how we value love, trust, and emotional resonance. And Emma, too, carried that awareness, feeling strengthened and enlightened by the emotional intimacy they had experienced, and by the lessons of patience, restraint, and unspoken understanding. And together, though separated by circumstance, by loyalty, and by propriety, they had discovered a rare truth, that hearts can connect deeply, profoundly, and meaningfully without transgression, that longing can exist without destruction, that attraction can coexist with respect, and that human emotion, in its complexity, is capable of creating beauty even in silence, even in restraint, leaving an indelible mark on their souls, guiding their choices, shaping their reflections, and coloring the world around them with quiet, unspoken significance. And as Liam finished preparing his evening tea and glanced across the room to where Emma was quietly reading, he felt the warmth of their connection, subtle yet persistent, like sunlight filtering through a window, illuminating corners of the heart previously unnoticed, a reminder that some bonds, once felt, never fully fade, but linger quietly, shaping thought, emotion, and perception in gentle, profound ways, leaving hearts richer, wiser, and infinitely more aware of the delicate beauty of human connection, empathy, and the quiet power of unspoken understanding. And as the evening shadows lengthened and the kitchen settled into a calm, gentle rhythm, Liam realized that while life would continue with all its routines, responsibilities, and relationships, the emotional bond he shared with Emma, delicate yet unbreakable, would remain a quiet, guiding presence, a soft, tender reminder of the depth, complexity, and resilience of the human heart, a connection formed in a single morning that would echo in thought, feeling, and memory, shaping the way he loved, listened, and lived. And in that realization, a sense of peace settled over him, tempered with the thrill of remembered longing and the quiet satisfaction of restraint, leaving him with a profound, enduring appreciation for the intricate, beautiful dance of human emotion, connection, and the delicate, unspoken promises that bind hearts in ways seen and unseen, shaping life with subtle, lasting power.